Commentary on Psalm 140 by John Chrysostom. Lord, I cried out to you, hear me. Listen to the voice of my prayer. Everyone, you might say, knows the words of this psalm, and they sing it throughout their whole life, but they are ignorant of the meaning of the words they sing, and that is no small charge against them, that they chant it every single day, that they let the words pass through their lips, yet never once seek to understand the power of the thoughts contained in those words. If a person were to see clear and pure water, he would not be able to resist approaching it, touching it and drinking it. And if someone were to walk continually into a meadow, he would not leave without gathering some of its flowers. Yet you, from the very first years of childhood until the last breath of old age, go on reciting this psalm, knowing only the words. You sit beside a treasure but never uncover it. You carry around a sealed purse, and not even out of curiosity does anyone get stirred up enough to find out what is actually being said. No one seeks it, no one examines it. And you cannot even say that the psalm is so plain that it lulls everyone to sleep and leaves nothing to search for. On the contrary, it is obscure enough to rouse even a drowsy soul, or rather, to awaken even one who is deeply asleep. For what does it mean when it says, "Do not turn my heart to words of wickedness"? And what is this? "A righteous man will correct me with mercy and reprove me." And what comes after that? Tell me, is there anything darker, more puzzling than this? Even my prayer is among their pleasures. And again, their judges have been swallowed up near the rock. Yet even though so many things here are difficult to understand, most people pass over them as if it were a simple song. But so that we don't make the charge heavier and turn this speech into a burden, let us now go on to examine what has been said. Pay close attention, for I do not think this psalm was appointed by the fathers to be said every evening just because of that one line which says, "The lifting up of my hands is an evening sacrifice," since other psalms also contain that phrase, like the one which says, "Evening and morning and at noon I will speak and cry aloud," and again, "Yours is the day and yours is the night," and again, "Weeping will lodge at evening, but joy comes in the morning." And you could find many psalms suitable for the evening hour. It was not for that reason, then, that the fathers established this psalm, but they ordained that it be said as a saving medicine, a cleansing from sins. In this way, whatever stain we pick up throughout the whole length of the day, whether in the marketplace or in the house or wherever we spend our time, we may, when we come to the evening, wash it away through this spiritual remedy. For it is a medicine that removes all such things, and the morning psalm is the same kind of thing. There is nothing to stop us from mentioning it briefly here too. It kindles desire for God, awakens the soul, sets it ablaze, fills it with abundant goodness and love, and then lets it draw near to Him. Let us see where it begins and what it teaches us. O God, my God, I seek you early. My soul thirsts for you. Do you see the words of a soul burning with longing? Where the love of God is, all evil vanishes. Where the remembrance of God is, there is forgetfulness of sins and the removal of wickedness. So I have appeared before you in the holy place to see your power and your glory. What does "so" mean? He says, "With this longing, with this love, so that I may see your glory, which can be seen everywhere on earth." But so that we don't neglect what is before us and wander off into something secondary, sending the listener away to what has been said elsewhere, let us now turn back to the subject at hand. What does he mean when he says, "Lord, I cried out to you, hear me"? What are you saying? Tell me. Because you cried out, do you think you deserve to be heard? And do you present that as a reasonable cause for God to listen to you? Then is there now a need for loud voices and shouting with strength? That would make no sense. For what sin has the one with a small, weak or slow voice committed? Wasn't Moses like that? Slow of speech? And yet he was heard more than anyone? Didn't the Jews cry out louder than anyone, and yet God did not respond to their prayers? Loudness or softness of voice is nothing but a natural advantage or disadvantage. These things do not cause God to listen or not listen. They are not worthy of praise or blame. Many natural advantages belong even to the most vile people. Wasn't Absalom handsome and attractive, so much so that the beauty of his body extended even to his hair? So what? Wasn't Elisha bald, mocked even by children? Yet Absalom's beauty did him no good, and Elisha's lack of it did him no harm. And why speak only of weak or slow speech, when even silence was heard? Moses was heard without speaking a word, and Hannah, though her lips did not move, was heard by God. But to the Jews God said, "Even if you multiply your prayers, I will not hear you." So what does the psalmist mean when he says, "I cried out to you, hear me"? Here, crying out means the inward cry. The cry born from a heart burning with longing and from a mind crushed and humbled. This is the kind of cry by which Moses was heard. For just as the one who shouts empties all his strength, so the one who cries out from the heart gathers up and pours out his whole mind. Such a cry as this is what God seeks, a cry that draws the heart together, that does not allow the one praying to yawn or drift off as he prays. And not only does God seek this kind of cry, but he also seeks that the prayer itself be directed to him. For there are many who stand in prayer, yet do not cry out to God. Their lips cry out to God, their mouths speak his name, but their minds are unaware of anything they are saying. Such a person does not cry out, even if he shouts loudly. Such a person does not pray to God, even if he seems to be praying to him. But Moses was not like this. He cried out and was heard. That is why God said to him, "Why do you cry out to me?" And not only when he cried out, but even when he was silent, he accomplished what he desired, because he made himself worthy of being heard. And if you want to see even sinners praying earnestly, crying out and accomplishing great things, look at the sinful woman who cried out in silence, and look at the tax collector who was justified by a single prayer. This is the kind of cry the psalmist also makes. That is why he says, "Lord, I cried out to you, hear me," and it is for this reason that he dares to ask to be heard. In the time when I cried out to you, see here yet another virtue of prayer. He does not ask to be heard merely because he prayed with zeal, but because he presented a prayer worthy of those sleepless eyes, a prayer fitting to be received by God himself. And what kind of prayer is that? It is when a person does not pray against his enemies, does not pray for wealth or greed, does not pray for power or glory, nor for any of these corruptible things, but prays for those things that are pure and immortal. For seek the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. In the time when I cried out to you, do you see how he wants us also to call upon him with zeal and eagerness? For the devil lurks most of all at that moment, since he knows that prayer is the greatest weapon, and that even if we are sinners and disgraced, yet if we pray carefully and according to God's laws, we accomplish great things. Then it is precisely at that time that he strives to throw us into laziness, to stir up distracting thoughts, so that we leave our prayer having borne no fruit. Therefore, knowing these things, we must strengthen our zeal against the devil's schemes, and never pray against our enemies, but rather imitate the apostles. For even they, after suffering countless terrible things, after being thrown into prisons and facing the greatest dangers, fled to prayer and said, "Look upon their threats." And what then? Did they say, "Crush them," or "kill them," as many people, lifting up their hands, often say? By no means. What did they say instead? "Grant to your servants to speak your word with boldness." And how? In what way? By killing their enemies, by destroying them and handing them over to utter ruin? Absolutely not. But how? By stretching out your hand to heal, and that signs and wonders may be done through the name of your holy servant Jesus. Do you see a prayer full of wisdom, one which, after so many evils, did not ask for any revenge against their enemies. And not only did the apostles pray like this while still alive and breathing, but Stephen, even as he was about to be torn away from this present life, not only asked nothing evil against them, but even strove through his prayer to snatch those who were stoning and killing him out of the wrath coming upon them for this sin. He said, "Lord, do not hold this sin against them." What possible excuse then could those have? What defense could they make who pray against their enemies? And how could such a prayer ever be heard when it is offered in direct opposition to the laws of God? Let us never say such things. For it is not only necessary that we do not pray against our enemies, but also that we remove the anger we feel toward them. That is why it says, "I want the men to pray in every place, lifting up holy hands without anger or disputing." This means that even if you have an enemy, extinguish your anger before you approach the Master. Do not only keep your mouth from speaking anything against him, but also cleanse your mind of its poison. If prayer is offered in this way, and you call upon God with zeal, you will be heard even before you finish your prayer. For this is what the psalmist himself asks when he says, "Pay attention to the voice of my supplication when I cry out to you." And it is God's own promise, while you are still speaking, I will say, "Here I am." Let my prayer be set before you as incense. Another translation reads, "Let my prayer be ordered before you as incense, the lifting up of my hands as an evening sacrifice." Another says, "as an evening gift." Another, "as an evening offering." What does the prophet want to teach us by speaking of the evening sacrifice? In ancient times there were two altars, one made of bronze, the other of gold. The bronze one was almost public, placed outside for the sacrifices of the whole people, but the golden one was laid inside the inner sanctuary, beyond the veil. To make what I'm saying clearer, let us trace things back from the beginning. Among the Jews, there was once a temple, 40 cubits long and 20 cubits wide. From that length, 10 cubits were taken away and enclosed within the veil. The part inside was called the Holy of Holies, and the part outside simply the Holy Place. And everything in it gleamed with gold. Some, moreover, said that even the upper beam, the one overlaid with gold, was part of this sacred place. There only the high priest entered, and only once a year. There also stood the ark, and the cherubim were there. There too was the golden altar, where incense was offered, built for no other purpose than the burning of incense. And this was done only once a year. In the outer part of the temple, however, there was a bronze altar, and every evening a lamb was brought there and burned. This was called the evening sacrifice. There was also a morning sacrifice for twice a day, morning and evening. Something had to be burned on the altar of the temple, apart from the other offerings that were brought by the people. This was a command and a law given to the priests, that even if no one brought an offering, they themselves were to sacrifice and burn one lamb in the morning and one in the evening. The one was called the morning sacrifice, and the other the evening sacrifice. And God ordained this to be done in order to teach, through what was done, that he must be served continually at the beginning and at the end of each day. This sacrifice then was always acceptable, and the offering was always pleasing, but the sacrifice offered for sins was sometimes accepted and sometimes not, depending on the character of those who brought it, whether they were inclined toward virtue or toward evil. Yet the offering that was not brought for sins, but as a law of priestly service and a way of worship, was always acceptable. In the same way, the psalmist asks that his prayer might be like that sacrifice, unstained by any blemish from the one who offers it, like that incense which was pure and holy. And because he asks this, he also teaches us to make our prayers pure and fragrant. For such is righteousness, just as sin, by contrast, is foul-smelling. That is why he himself shows the stench of sin, saying, "For my iniquities have gone over my head. Like a heavy burden they are too heavy for me. My wounds stink and fester, just as incense is good and fragrant in itself, yet shows its fragrance most fully when it comes into contact with fire. So prayer too is good in itself, but it becomes better and more fragrant when it is offered with a soul that is burning and boiling with zeal. When the soul itself becomes the censer and kindles a strong flame, then prayer rises rightly. For incense was never placed on the altar before the coals were lit and glowing. Do the same with your mind. First, set it aflame with eagerness, and then lay upon it the offering of prayer. So then the psalmist prays that his prayer might be as incense and the lifting up of his hands as an evening sacrifice. Both are pleasing to God. And how can they be so? If both are pure and without blemish, both the tongue and the hands purified from greed and theft, and the tongue freed from evil words. For just as the censer must contain nothing unclean, nothing but fire and incense, so the tongue must not pour out filthy speech, but only holiness and praise. And so too the hands must become a censer. Let your mouth then be a censer, and be careful not to fill it with dung. Those who speak shameful and filthy words do exactly that. And why does he not say morning sacrifice but evening sacrifice? I think it makes no difference, for if he had said morning, the overly curious would have asked why he did not say evening. But if anyone wishes to hear the reason more carefully, it is this: the morning sacrifice awaits the evening one, but the evening sacrifice once offered completes the service. The day's worship is then no longer incomplete, but has reached its fulfillment and its end. But why does he also speak of the lifting up of hands in prayer? Because our hands are often used to serve many evils. For example, to strike, to murder, to steal, to act in greed. For this very reason, we are commanded to lift them up, so that the service of prayer may become a chain that binds them away from evil and frees them from wickedness. Then, when you are about to steal or act greedily or strike another, you will remember that you are about to send those same hands as advocates before God, and through them to offer up that spiritual sacrifice. Do not disgrace them, and do not make them shameless by employing them in the service of wicked deeds. Instead, purify them with almsgiving, with love for mankind, with care for those in need, and then lift them up in prayer. For if you would not permit unwashed hands to be raised in prayer, much more should you not dare to stain them with sins. If you fear the lesser, then tremble all the more before the greater. For to pray with unwashed hands is not so terrible, but to lift up hands defiled with countless sins brings great wrath. We must think the same way about the mouth and tongue, keeping them inaccessible to wickedness, and only then bringing our prayer before God. For if someone owned a vessel made of gold, he would never choose to use it for a dishonorable purpose because of the preciousness of the material. How much more, then, we who possess mouths more valuable than gold and pearls should never defile them with shameless and filthy words, with insults and abuse. You do not bring the censer to a bronze altar, nor even to a golden one, but to something far more precious, a spiritual temple. For in that case the material is lifeless, but in you God himself dwells, and you are a member of Christ and his body. Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Having asked the Master to hear his prayer and make it acceptable, notice what his first request is, what his first petition is. He does not say, "Give me wealth," or "Give me honor among people," or "Give me power over my enemies," or "Give me children." None of these. He casts all such earthly matters aside and asks from God the things it is truly right to ask from God. Does this mean we must not ask for physical things? We should, but with moderation, say as Jacob said, "If the Lord gives me bread to eat and clothing to wear," and as Christ commanded us to pray, saying, "Give us this day our daily bread." But above all, we must seek spiritual things. And this is exactly what the psalmist does when he says, "Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth." Do you see the wisdom here? Do you see the deep understanding? Look at where his request begins. With the greatest of all victories, the root of all evils when neglected, and the source of all good things when carefully guarded. For the tongue's looseness produces countless evils, just as its restraint produces countless goods. Just as a house, a city, walls, gates, and doors are of no use if there are no guards who know when to close them and when to open them, so too the tongue and the mouth are of no benefit unless reason stands watch over their opening and closing with precision and great discernment, knowing what words to let out and what words to keep inside. For, it says, not as many have fallen by the sword as have fallen by the tongue. And again Christ says, it is not what enters the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth. And again another says, make a door and a bar for your mouth. Because he knows how difficult this is, the psalmist also adds prayer and calls God to be his ally in this struggle. Indeed, that other passage hints at the same thing when it says, who will set a guard upon my lips? For we must do our part, and that is why the command is given, make a door and a bar. But we must also call on God's help, so that our effort may succeed. Let us therefore guard our mouths constantly, placing reason as their lock, not so that they remain closed forever, but so that they open at the right time and speak what is fitting. For sometimes silence is more beneficial than speech, and sometimes speech is more beneficial than silence. That is why the very wise man said, there is a time to keep silent and a time to speak. For if the mouth were meant to be always open, there would be no need for doors, and if it were meant to be always closed, there would be no need for a guard. For what would anyone guard if it were already locked shut? But it is precisely for this reason that there are both a door and a guard, so that we may use them at the proper time. Another says, make a balance and a scale for your tongue, demanding even greater precision, so that we not only speak the words we ought to speak, but weigh them carefully and thoughtfully, as one would weigh gold, which is a perishable material. How much more, then, must we do this with words, so that nothing is lacking and nothing is excessive? Therefore it is also written, do not withhold a word in the time of salvation. Do you see there is a time to speak? Another says, if you have a word, answer, but if not, let your hand be over your mouth. And again, he who talks too much will be hated. And better is a man who hides his foolishness than a man who hides his wisdom. Have you heard a word? Let it die within you. Take courage, it will not burst you. And again, a fool will suffer pain at a word, as a woman in labor suffers at the birth of a child. Then he also speaks about measure. Speak, young man, if you need to, but only twice. And if you are asked, summarize much in a few words. Great care is needed in our thoughts so that we use the power of the tongue with great caution. That is why it is also said, there is a rebuke that is not timely, and there is one who keeps silent and is considered wise. For we must not only keep silent and speak at the right time, but do so with great grace. And this is why Paul said, let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person. Consider that this is the very member by which we speak with God, by which we offer up praise to Him. This is the member by which we receive the awesome sacrifice, and the faithful know what I mean. Therefore it must be kept free from all accusation, from insult, from filthy speech, and from slander. And if a lustful thought tries to force its way out, you must choke it inside and not allow it to be spoken. And if faint-heartedness tries to make you grumble, you must dry up that root as well, keeping the door secure and the guard precise. Do not allow evil thoughts even to be conceived, and if they are conceived, strangle them within and wither the root. Such a guard over his mouth Job had, and that is why he never uttered a harsh or foolish word, but rather kept silent most of the time. And when he did speak to his wife, he spoke words full of wisdom. For we should only speak when our words will be more useful than silence. That is why Christ said, every idle word that people speak, they will give an account of it. And Paul said, let no corrupt word come out of your mouth. And how can this door be secure and this guard be precise? Listen to what another says. Let all your speech be in the law of the Most High. For if you train yourself never to speak anything unnecessary, but always to fortify both your mind and your mouth with the teaching of the divine scriptures, your guard will be stronger than adamant. For there are many paths to destruction that pass through the mouth. When a person speaks shamefully, when he jokes crudely, when he boasts vainly, when he brags proudly, like the Pharisee who, because he had no door over his mouth, poured out everything within him in just a few words. And just as a house without a door cannot hold on to its treasure and quickly becomes poor, so too did he lose everything at once. Consider also another who is destroyed in the same way, by boasting. For he said, I will set my throne above the stars of heaven. And the Jews, because they delighted in the misfortunes of their neighbors, at one time said, well done, Israel has become like the other nations. But now they are reproached because of their grumbling, saying, everyone who does evil is good in the sight of the Lord, and in them he delights. And now we call the proud blessed, those who do wickedness are built up. Are not these things written in the book? Others perished because of grumbling, as Paul says, do not grumble, as some of them grumbled and were destroyed by the destroyer. And when did they grumble? When they said, have you brought us out here to die in the wilderness because there were no graves in Egypt? Others perished because of idolatrous revelry, as it is written, they ate and drank and rose up to play. Others because of insults. Everyone who says to his brother, you fool, will be liable to judgment. And many more perished for other reasons, all because they did not guard their mouths. And if you wish to hear of some who perished because of untimely silence, I will show you. If you do not warn the people, it says, he will die in his sin, but his blood I will require at your hand. Others perish because they speak without discernment and pour out what was entrusted to them. Do not give what is holy to dogs, nor cast your pearls before pigs. Others perish because of laughter. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Do you see how the mouth can destroy? Now see also how the mouth can save, and from the very opposite things. Do you see the Pharisee destroyed by his own mouth? Look then at the tax collector saved by his. Do you see the boastful barbarian who was condemned? Look at the righteous man who humbled himself and said, I am dust and ashes. Do you see the one who rejoiced at another's suffering being accused and punished? Look at the one who shared in another's pain and was saved, for it is written, put a mark on the foreheads of those who sigh and groan. That is why Paul also said, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Even if you can do nothing else, he says, you will offer something great to the one in pain if you share his suffering. Do you see the one who laughed being handed over to mourning? Look at the one who mourns receiving comfort. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Do you see those who complained being punished? Look at those who gave thanks being saved. Blessed are you, Lord, and worthy of praise is your name, because you are righteous in all that you have done to us. And shortly after, all that you have brought upon us, you have done in true judgment. They said, everyone who does evil is good in the sight of the Lord. But these said the opposite. Your eyes are too pure to look on evil. They blessed foreigners because they were built up while doing lawlessness. But these, blessed those helped by God. Blessed is the people whose God is the Lord. And again, do not be envious of those who do evil, nor be jealous of those who commit lawlessness. Do you see the saints both instructing others and themselves remaining unshaken in trials? Listen then to what Jacob said. If the Lord gives me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and consider Abraham, I will not take from you even a thread or a sandal strap. And when his wife was about to be violated and famine was upon them, he did not utter a single harsh or foolish word. And when his son said, Father, here is the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb? See how gently and wisely he answered, God himself will provide a lamb, my son. He was not turned aside by nature or by sympathy in response to his child's words, but remained fixed on what he was doing, alone with God, even when his longing as a father was most likely burning within him more intensely than ever. For so that no one might say that he held back his grief merely out of shame before others, he separated himself from them, and being alone, displayed the full strength of his self-mastery and wisdom. Do you see those who were punished because of laughter? Look then at those who were saved through mourning and fasting. Think of the people of Nineveh. Do you see those punished for insults? Look at those who receive a reward for words of blessing. He who blesses you will be blessed, and he who curses you will be cursed. Bless those who persecute you. Pray for those who mistreat you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. Do you see then that the mouth should neither be kept shut at all times, nor opened for everything, but that we must know the right time for each? This is why the prophet, knowing this, said, Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth, and a door of restraint over my lips. And what guard could be better than a mind standing watch in fear, holding in its hands the fire that will one day burn those who use their mouths carelessly? Appoint this as your gatekeeper and guard, one that threatens your conscience, and your mouth will never open at the wrong time, but only at the right time, for your gain and for countless blessings. That is why it is written, Remember your end always, and you will never sin. Do you see how this too establishes such a watch over the soul? But I make it even more fearful, not by speaking only of death, but also of what comes after death, by saying that this guard holds the fire in its hands. If this is present, then no evil thought will ever even be conceived in the mind. Alongside this, set up another guard, the one who says, For every idle word people speak, they will give an account on the day of judgment. Consider that death itself entered the world through words. For if the woman had not spoken with the serpent as she did, if she had not listened to his words, she would not have received the harm, she would not have given the fruit to her husband, and he would not have eaten. And I say these things not to blame the tongue or the mouth, far from it, but to blame the untimely use of them, which comes from the laziness of our reasoning. There is yet another path to destruction that comes through the mouth. When kisses are shameful and impure, when they are deceitful and treacherous, set a guard against these too. Such was the kiss of Judas, full of treachery. But not so the kiss Paul spoke of, when he commanded, Greet one another with a holy kiss. Nor was David's kiss to Jonathan like that, but holy, reverent, and full of sincere love, just like the kisses of those who fell upon Paul's neck and kissed him. For this reason he says, Set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth, and a door, not just a door, but a door of restraint, one that encompasses everything and secures it. There is also another kind of destruction that comes through the tongue, speaking itself. Why is this? For what reason does this happen? It is for this reason that Paul rebukes those who speak recklessly. But who are you, O man, to answer back to God? We must guard not only the mouth, but also the mind before the mouth. Therefore someone once said, Who will set a whip over my thoughts, so that they will not spare me in my ignorance? And this is why Christ destroys evil thoughts from within, saying, Everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Do you see how he does not allow them even to sprout, not to begin, not to become desire, not to turn into anger? For whoever is angry with his brother will be liable to the hell of fire. And it is also no small safeguard to speak little, for in many words you will not escape sin, but whoever restrains his lips is prudent. Do not incline my heart to evil words, to make excuses in sins. Another translation reads, "Do not let my heart turn aside to evil words, to consider lawless thoughts." Why then does he reverse the order, speaking first about the mouth and then about the heart? He does not do this carelessly or without reason. Just as, when prisoners attempt to escape, those in charge first secure the doors of the prison, and once that is done, the rest is easily handled, so too here he does the same. Through his exhortation, he is almost saying this: if the doors are shut, evil thoughts will quickly be subdued. That is why he does not allow them even to gain entry from the outside. He tears up the evil root itself, saying, "Do not incline my heart to evil words." Not that God causes the heart to incline, far from it, but his meaning is this: do not allow it to be inclined, do not allow it to be drawn aside into wicked thoughts. For from there, from the heart, flows the source of both virtue and wickedness. And what are words of wickedness? They are many and of various kinds. Those who weave plots, those who slander God, those who turn away from virtue, those who pursue evil, those whose speech delights in corrupt doctrines and a careless life. Such words are born out of great wickedness. And just as there are thoughts and words of wickedness, so too there are words of life. This is why the disciples said to Christ, "You have the words of eternal life, and to whom shall we go?" Words are called words of life when they bring life, and words of salvation when they bring salvation. Thus a wise man says, "Do not withhold a word in a time of salvation." Words of wickedness, then, are also those that make those who speak them wicked. For just as there are pestilential and disease-bearing airs, so too there are words. What those do to the body, these do to the soul that receives them. And so he prays here too and says, "Do not let my heart receive such words. Do not let it incline that way." Do you see how he shows the power of free will? That wickedness is not something nature contains in itself, but is received when the soul inclines to it through laziness. To make excuses in sins, this is above all the road to destruction. When either the soul that has sinned throws off fear and invents excuses for its carelessness, or when someone trying to dull another's remorse after adultery says, "It's not your fault, desire is to blame." To sin is indeed evil, but to deny it after sinning makes it far worse. This is the devil's greatest weapon. This is what happened with the first-formed humans. Adam ought to have confessed his wrongdoing, but instead he shifted the blame to another, and she, in turn, blamed the devil. They should have said, "We have sinned, we have acted lawlessly." But they did not only refuse to confess, they even built a defense for themselves. For the devil knows that confession of sin is the release from sin, so he persuades the soul to be shameless. But you, beloved, when you sin, say, "I have sinned." No defense is more righteous than this. By doing so, you make God merciful toward you, and you make yourself more reluctant to fall into the same sins again. But when you begin to look for false excuses and try to rid your soul of fear, you make it more eager to plunge back into the same sins, and you provoke God even more. For none of those who sin lack shameless excuses. The murderer claims anger made him do it. The thief blames poverty. The adulterer blames desire. Another blames power. But these are senseless pretexts, offering no valid defense. For none of these things cause sin, the will of those who sin does. And that these excuses are worthless I will make clear from examples. When you see another person living in poverty, struggling with desire, subjected to the same natural needs, and yet not sinning, what excuse could those who do sin possibly have? For this reason a wise man rightly said, "Who will give whips upon my thoughts, that they may not spare me for my ignorances?" Look at David. When he sinned, he did not make excuses, but said, "I have sinned against the Lord." And yet he could have said, "Why was the woman exposed? Why was she bathing before my eyes?" But he knew that such reasoning was a foolish pretext. That is why he came straight to the honest confession by saying, "I have sinned." But Saul was not like this. When he was accused concerning the medium, he said, "I am greatly distressed, and the Philistines are warring against me." For this very reason, he was punished all the more. He ought to have said, "I have sinned, I have transgressed," but he did not say this. Instead, he went around seeking senseless excuses. With men working iniquity, he adds this, showing that shameless excuse-making belongs especially to such people. And that is why David continually presents as a mark of virtue the avoidance of such company. Indeed, at the very beginning of the whole book he says, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers." Because of this, you will always find David humble and reasonable concerning his sins. When David numbered the people, he said, "I have sinned, and I, the shepherd, have done wickedly." He did not say, "What harm is it that I counted them?" Instead, he condemned himself, and for that reason he obtained mercy. For nothing makes God more merciful than when we confess our own sins. This attitude comes from avoiding the kinds of conversations that weaken the fear born from sin and lead us into laziness. This is why both Paul and Jeremiah speak strongly on this matter, urging us to flee from the company of the wicked and from those who live carelessly. And Job too counts this among the marks of virtue, saying, "If I have walked with scoffers," and he shows that he did not even sit with such people. "I did not sit in the assembly of mockers." For this reason, Paul also forbids us from eating with the wicked or even associating with them, saying, "If anyone does not obey our word in this letter, take note of that person and do not associate with him." And again, "I will not sit with their chosen ones." Another says, "I will not eat of their delicacies." And another, "I will not lodge in their pleasures." Here the apostolic teaching shows us that we must avoid even their luxuries and feasts, for their sin grows most abundantly, and their lawlessness finds its greatest freedom. And this too is no small sign of virtue, no small path to correction, to flee such banquets and gatherings, not letting friendship make you ashamed, nor letting those enslaved to their stomachs weaken the strength of your soul, or loosen the firmness of your self-control. Many, out of fear of offending friends, have been dragged into the storm of drunkenness. Many have been captured by lust and have kindled the fire of desire, chasing after banquets and theaters full of lawlessness. The psalmist shows that he himself avoided such tables, saying, "A righteous man will correct me in mercy and rebuke me, but the oil of the sinner shall not anoint my head." Another version says, "Let a righteous man deal mercifully with me and reprove me." And this too is a great mark of virtue, together with the former, not to flee rebuke, nor to reject correction from the righteous. What he means is this: "I would never take part," he says, "in the conversations of those who speak to please and to harm me, but I would gladly join those who confront and correct me, those who expose my faults, those who rebuke me. For this is the truest form of mercy and love, to heal the wounds. But the oil of the sinner shall not anoint my head." Do you see a soul strengthened in virtue? It receives the rebukes of the righteous with delight, but rejects even the flattering words of lawless men. Why? Because the mercy of the unrighteous often leads to destruction, while the rebuke of the righteous brings healing. In the rebuke of the saints there is mercy. In the false mercy of sinners, death. Thus Scripture says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful." And notice how the apostolic command speaks in the same way. Rebuke, reprove, exhort. Such indeed is the rebuke of the saints. So too do physicians act. They do not only cut, but they also bind up the wound. For this reason, Christ, in order to make rebuke more easily received, does not allow correction to be made publicly from the beginning, but says, "Go and rebuke him between you and him alone." Paul likewise acted this way, showing rebuke mingled with mercy, at one time saying, "O foolish Galatians," and at another, My little children, for whom I am again in labor. For the one who rebukes must consider many things, so that the rebuke may be readily accepted, and much discernment is needed for the one applying this remedy. Indeed, more discernment is needed for rebuke than for cutting the body. Why? Because in that case, one person does the cutting and another endures the pain. But here, the same person is both the one cut and the one who feels the pain. The oil of the sinner shall not anoint my head. What does this mean? It means that the sinner does not seek what is useful to the one listening, but only his own, to appear pleasant, to be liked. But the righteous one looks to the benefit of the other person rather than to his own favor. In this they differ most greatly. And if we must reject the mercy of the wicked, when should we ever accept them? Never. Even if they offer you money or promise luxury and honors, reject them and flee. But pursue the righteous, even if they mock you with words, even if they rebuke you, for that one is the one who truly loves you. For even my prayer is in their favor. Another version reads, for even my prayer is against their evils. Another says, for even my prayer is amidst their wickedness. Some things he has asked from God, and some he provides from himself. From this he shows that in prayer we must not simply lie back idly and sleep, but also contribute what is within our own power. What then does he offer from himself? Not sheep, nor oxen, nor money, but the gentleness of his character and the earnest rejection of their wickedness. Not only, he says, will I flee from their harmful favor, nor will I choose their rebuke, but I will even stand in opposition to their desires. I'm so far from choosing their mercy that I even pray against their desires. This is the meaning of in their good pleasure. Their judges were swallowed up near the rock. Another version says, they shall be dashed down by the hand of the rock. Here he shows how easily sin is overthrown and how steep the fall of wickedness is. Even the mighty, he says, those who control and rule over all, perished. And he did not say they perished, but they were swallowed up, showing that they vanished so completely that no trace of them remained, as it is also said of the ungodly, I passed by, and behold, he was not. I sought him, but his place was not found. What does near mean here? It means close at hand. The sense is this: just as a stone thrown into the sea would not be seen again, so also their prosperity, once sunk, becomes invisible, suffering utter destruction. Or perhaps he means that which is nameless, uprooted, powerful, and mighty. For this is what is meant by, they shall be dashed down by the hand of the rock. They shall hear my words, for they are sweet. Another version reads, for they have been brought into order. Another, for they have been made pleasing. That is, through experience, they will come to know the sweetness of my exhortation and counsel, and how the rebuke of the righteous brings forth this fruit, and their discipline carries with it great delight. For such is virtue, its labor is temporary, but its joy is everlasting. As a clod of earth is broken upon the ground, so our bones have been scattered near Hades. Another version says, just as a farmer, when he plows the land, breaks the soil, so our bones have been scattered into the mouth of Hades. Another, just as when one cuts and splits the earth, our bones have been scattered into Hades. Another, like one cultivating and digging the soil, our bones have been scattered near Hades. After saying that his words have great sweetness, he also recalls past misfortunes, that even though we have suffered to the utmost, and just as the ground is split open, ploughed, or dug up, so too have we all been scattered, destroyed, and brought even to the very gates of death. Yet even in such a state, we would still choose discipline and correction from the righteous rather than mercy from sinners. For no matter what happens, we hang all our hope upon you, and we will never turn our eyes away from you. And he does not say that we should do this for 1 day, or 2, or 3, but for our whole life. This is safety, this is a wall of defense, this is the progress of virtue, to avoid the wicked, to remain gathered and united within yourself throughout your entire life, and to live apart from those who corrupt. For it is not solitude that makes one truly alone, but a thoughtful and disciplined mind. Thus, even those living in the middle of cities, among noise and marketplaces, can still be truly alone, if they avoid the gatherings of the corrupt and devote themselves to the company of the righteous. This is the surest path. The one who is strong enough to correct others should associate with those who are willing to accept healing and make them better. But the one who is weaker should flee from the wicked so that he does not receive their corruption. By doing this, he will live this present life in safety and will attain the good things to come, which may we all obtain by the grace and love for mankind of our Lord Jesus Christ, to whom be glory and power, now and always, and unto the ages of ages. Amen.